Welcome to the Calm Edged Rebels podcast. I'm Jenni Field.
I'm Advita Patel.
And I'm Trudy Lewis. So in this episode, I thought we'd talk about a topic that is very interesting to me at the moment because of how much we encourage people to be better, to develop themselves and so on. And the topic is discipline. So I'm talking about discipline is freedom. And I've been reading a book recently that talks about discipline. And one of the big takeaways for me, I had this massive light bulb moment, which probably shouldn't be a light bulb moment because I do know this, was the fact that discipline is freedom. It was a statement that was made in the book about that happening. And I remember at the coaching retreat that we had recently, in talking to some of the people there, I mentioned it as something that we needed to consider. So we then had this amazing conversation about how freeing it was to be disciplined. And where in the past, I sometimes look at the word as a hard word, discipline always makes me think of work. I kind of thought to myself, discipline. So I had this little attitude towards the word. And then suddenly I'm reading that it's talking about freedom and it's talking about releasing us to do so many other things and to be so many other things. And it just reminded me of the fact that actually it's a good thing and it's a positive word, even though sometimes, it is sold to us in a hard way. Discipline is being told off, following the rules, making us conform and stay in a certain lane, stay in your lane. Make sure that you do everything that you've got to do. And it can be seen as being rigid. And I never look at myself as rigid. I look at myself as spontaneous. And recently I was listening to a podcast and somebody said, I'm spontaneously disciplined. Whereas in comparison to somebody who was very traditionally disciplined, which is I get up at the crack of dawn and so on. And he was saying I'm spontaneously disciplined, meaning I get everything done. I'm very, very on top of everything, but I don't necessarily keep within that rigid time frame. So what I wanted us to do today was just have a talk about discipline, what it means to you, how you've interacted with it as a word or as a thing, and how it's helped you to actually experience freedom. What do you reckon, Jenni? Well, discipline, it's interesting when you were saying discipline makes you think of work, because you used the word discipline, I immediately go back to school.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of transported back to Mr. Coombs' history lesson and the horror that was. But if discipline for me is very much school. It's definitely that. Yeah. It's that word, that image that sort of comes to mind. But I also think, if I'm reflecting on where we are in 2023, that my word for this year is consistency. And I've talked a lot about that being my word of this year. And I think that that's what's coming to mind around discipline. So actually, is it for me more about that consistency? And I talk also quite a lot from a work perspective about freedom in a framework. And I think there's something in that about having your freedom in a framework and being disciplined to have the freedom. And then I'm also thinking about the fact that I talk about planning for spontaneity, which makes everybody think I'm very dull. But I will try and, every month have one weekend where there's no plans. And that for me is what I mean by kind of planned there are no plans intentionally. So I've planned that. Because then I can do whatever I want to do with that weekend. And so many of my weekends are taken up with travel or family that to have weekends where I'm just at home with my husband and we can just do, nothing or whatever we want to do is so rare for us that I have to sort of plan that in to be spontaneous. So that's what I'm sort of thinking of as you're talking about that word discipline and freedom and how they're linked together.
It's really interesting because I've never really given that word much consideration in terms of work or life or anything. But when you were describing why it's really important to think about that, I think some of the habits I have formed are disciplined because I do want freedom to be able to do what I want to do. And one of the reasons I did set up Comms Rebel was because I did want freedom from the kind of structure I was stuck in. And I use that word intentionally because I felt stuck. But I knew that in order for me to succeed and to live the life I want to lead, there had to be elements of discipline or focus or intention or whatever we want to kind of call it, to allow us to live our life freely. And I think a lot of, I suppose if you want to kind of call them the successful multi-billionaires, if you read some of their memoirs or autobiographies, they will talk about having to be very disciplined in the way they work and the way they live their life in order for them to achieve the freedom they have got today. Because without that focus, they wouldn't be able to do the stuff they're doing right now. So there are some sacrifices you have to make with discipline.
Yeah.
But to Jenni's point, I suppose if you look at it as a bit of a standalone word, you do associate it to school days and to being told off and to be quite regimental. As soon as you talk discipline, the image that comes into my head is Army, Navy.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, that kind of...
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah, that kind of, because I always see those... Army, Navy, cadets, that kind of stuff, being very disciplined, very kind of focused, no messing about. And I suppose that is true in terms of our lives, right? In terms of discipline, we have to be, focused, committed, deliver the stuff we said we're going to deliver, and have some sort of routine that allows us to have that spontaneous behavior. Because I'm not very good with fixed discipline. I like to have fluidity in my day.
You do.
I do like to have fluidity.
That's new. Shall we do this? That's new.
Yeah. I do, because I like because the reason I wanted to do, like I said, work for myself is because I wanted that flexibility.
Yeah.
And that's really important to me. But I also know that it's not, I had this really misunderstanding of what it was like to run a business. Like, I can go for lunchtime walks and I can do some yoga. And I know I know you can plan it in, and all that. But in reality, let's be honest, right? When you're building a business and you're trying to survive and you're finding work and you can't do it. You can't do it. Like, being honest, it's a hard job. You have to sacrifice other things for you to do that. And I think that's important for us to recognise that. But in order to have the fun and to make sure that we are disciplined in making sure we have the fun, I like your idea of having a weekend, a month that's not planned but planned.
Yes. Yeah.
That allows you to do the things you want to do without actually planning the things you want to do.
Yes. Yeah. It's so lovely. Like the other weekend, I got up, I went to the gym, and then one of my friends is a head baker in a local coffee shop. So I can go over there and have a coffee, and she's making some cakes, and we'll have a little chat and have like a toasty, and I'll read my book. And it was so nice that I didn't have any time frame. I didn't have anywhere I had to be. I could just be in that moment and also do the things that I sort of wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I have that ability very often, which is why I do things like take myself away by myself a couple of times a year to have that time to plan in the ability to do whatever I like.
Unplanned things.
Yes.
But I mean, one of the things that's so interesting about this is one, how Advita was talking about the word, well, both of you mentioned what the word brings to mind. And because it's something that has a very positive outcome, maybe we shouldn't be thinking of it in the negative way that we remember it. Because, again, but it's what stood out. And I know it's probably then considered a slightly older word. I don't know. But then at the same time, it's still a word that we use. And when you say sacrifice, that's very much some of the things that drive being disciplined. You have to have some sacrifice. You have to sacrifice something. So the book that I've been reading is Discipline is Destiny by Ryan Holiday, and I'll put it in the show notes as well. But one of the things he says is that discipline is both predictive and deterministic. It makes it more likely you'll be successful, and it ensures success or failure, that whatever happens, you are great. The converse is also true. A lack of discipline puts you in danger. It also colours who and what you are.
And this is where the link to consistency is for me.
Yes.
Because if I think about that being sort of my theme is it is discipline, isn't it? It is the discipline of consistently showing up, consistently eating well, consistently, having the time in the diary to do the things I want to do.
Yeah.
That is a discipline to be consistent, I suppose.
Well, think of the accumulation of the consistency.
It is.
That's what brings the results. So, and it's a known fact, if you're on a diet,
Yeah.
and today I'm doing this diet, tomorrow I'm doing another diet, that's not going to necessarily bring you a result. But if you say to yourself, right, I'm sticking to calorie counting and I'm going to continue doing that every single day, that's what makes the difference. You begin to lose weight. But if you're doing this kind of flying in the wind kind of thing, oh, today I'll pick this one and today I'll pick that one, where the spontaneity is important because that keeps us balanced. There is a level to which discipline, or to be disciplined, means the consistency, and you have to build that in. And the sacrifice, in a sense, is, do you know what? I'm gonna forego something maybe in order to stick to what I've decided to do.
Sometimes it is hard though. I remember putting on my Insta story not that long ago. I was walking into the gym and doing my steps again. And I just was having one of those days where I just didn't want to. And I just wrote, consistency is hard sometimes, or it's boring or something. And Harriet, who I know, sort of commented back just in my DMs and said, I really needed to hear that today. And I think sometimes we don't, talk about it enough, but it was nice to know that someone else was feeling that same feeling of like, we're showing up, we're consistently doing stuff, we're being really disciplined, but I just don't want to today.
Yeah. I think it is hard. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say that I think the best results and outcomes require hard work.
Yeah.
And I think when things come too easy, you don't feel that sense of satisfaction. I think is when you see the results of some real discipline and commitment and focus, you reap the benefits of that. And it is hard, and I think it's a pattern of behaviour that we need to be aware of. And there are days when we struggle, and there are days when we don't want to do it, and there are days where we just want to throw all the rules out the window and just, do whatever we want to do, which is why it's, to your point, it's so important to have planned, unplanned days.
I feel like you're going to do this now. You're going to have weekends that are planned, spontaneous.
I try and...
Well, it's a great idea.
Well, I always try and keep, self-care Sundays.
Yes, I've started doing them because you
Self-care Sundays is my, it's planned that I'm doing a self-care Sunday, but it's really free, but I will not allow... It's a discipline of mine that I need to do this because I didn't do it throughout the writing of the book because every week I was writing the book and I felt it. I felt that lack of discipline in looking after myself had a massive impact on my well-being and how I felt. And I saw the after effects of that. So this is why it's so important to have that discipline, which is a word I've never really used this year, but now I said it about 35 times.
Well, I think we should probably count how many times.
Oh, it's like that one, the strategy and tactics episode we did.
Oh my goodness,
ago.
Same thing.
Do someone listened to that and they said, I've gone back and listened to it again, and I think you said it about 80 times because I counted it. So yeah, there we go.
I love
fun fact.
Counted it. Oh, amazing.
But I think it's so important though to remove negativeness that we attach to certain things, even if when we were growing up it was quite negative, it might have been negative. As we're older, starting businesses, doing all these other things, it's not such a negative thing. And if we attach the negativeness to it, I can barely say that word, but if we do that, then it becomes even harder. So it is hard. I think discipline is hard. I think it's designed to be that way because the outcome can be quite special. But at the same time, I think having a negative connotation to it makes it even worse or harder.
As you're talking about it, I'm also thinking about motivation, which we've talked about in this season as well. But isn't it weird how, to me, being disciplined and being motivated and being consistent all feel like quite similar things? Yet we'll happily talk about, God, you're really motivated. Nobody would go, God, you're really disciplined. It just has that like, it just doesn't sort of feel the same.
Well, that's what I said about how I used to view the word, which is why when I saw in print, it's freedom, I was like, it just suddenly jerked to me to think, but it is freedom. Yeah. It's the same thing that consistency is, motivation is. They all lead to opening up for us something that we didn't know that we could attain, maybe, because we start out, many things we start out, we're not sure we can actually achieve them. We know that we'd like to, and we put the work in, but it's the work that aligns to the discipline and the consistency and the motivation.
And there's definitely something about discipline and hard work.
Yes.
Whereas I think, and then maybe that's the difference with motivation.
Maybe.
So motivating myself to keep showing up or keep doing something is one thing, but being disciplined to keep going when something is hard.
But motivation's hard, right? Like I think
it is.
in our episode when we spoke about motivation, we said it can be really difficult to motivate yourself to do something you don't want to do or do something that you know you have to do. But I think you need, I mean, we're getting into all sorts of...
I know.
But I think you need discipline to be motivated and to drive consistency.
Wow.
Oh, they've got an
I
equation.
I see a map.
Say that again.
So, Brené point there. So I think you need discipline to drive motivation discipline to have motivation to drive consistency. I think that's how
I love that.
I think that's how it works. And I think if we think of it in that way, so I need to be disciplined so I can be motivated, so I can be consistent. And it's a consistency that will give you the results.
Yeah. Because it is the consistency, you know, and I think we've all felt that in every aspect of my life. If I think about my business redefining communications and people say to me, you know, how do people find you? How do you get leads?
Yeah.
How do people just drop into your inbox and say things? I'm like, because we consistently show up.
Yeah.
You know, we haven't stopped showing up in the spaces that are the right spaces for us for, 6 years now. That's just consistency, but it's discipline
and motivation
that have led to that,
to consistency,
to kind of get us there. So and say
there's a book in there somewhere.
There's a book.
I know,
we're going to have a Edged Rebs book.
Oh my goodness!
Oh God! You wait till we finish recording this one. We'll be like, oh my God, we can write a book.
So over the summer, I had, we had really good weather. And before summer, I'd started walking very early in the morning. So first thing, I'd get up and I'd go for a walk. And I don't know what happened. It was like something just clicked in me and I thought, do you know what? I want to keep doing this. I'm really enjoying it. And I walked to a park that's very close to me. And I found myself getting incredibly disciplined about this and consistent to the extent where it was eventually so joyous that I was like, I don't want to stop doing this. I'm really, really loving it. And so the discipline, the hard work became easy. And I would definitely say that was freeing.
Yes.
So it no longer felt like hard work to get up really early in the morning, put on clothes, put on trainers, head out, whether it was cooler or warmer, and just go for a really long walk. It became something that was like a joy. And I know that's an easy one because everybody likes walking.
But that's nice. And it's made...
I don't think they do.
You don't think everybody does?
I do, but I know there's lots of people who do.
Yeah, lots of people don't. There's lots of things I don't like that other people like. Okay. But I'm also thinking about the conversation Advita and I were having, I think, the other day, linked to you starting the gym and working out, and how almost the emotion has been taken.
started the gym.
You'll hear all about it on my story.
But it's almost the emotion's been taken away from doing that. So the discipline of going has become more emotionless, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas interestingly for you with the walking, it's almost like, I'm enjoying this, I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
So there is more emotion there. Whereas I think for you, Advita, there was definitely something around, it's neither good nor bad. I'm just doing it because I'm disciplined and it's a lifestyle change.
It has to be done.
But taking that emotion out of it has almost enabled the discipline, because there's not any emotion to kind of go, don't do it, just stay in bed or whatever.
Well, at the beginning, for me, it was not a joy. It was literally, I need to keep moving. I need to get some air. I need to make sure it was good for my mental health. It was good for my physical health. So for me, it was not a pleasant thing because I had to get out of the bed. The bed is warm and relaxed and nice and cozy. Why would I get out of bed that early? But eventually it just switches into something that's good. And I guess the whole point with discipline is how we look at things that we want to achieve. And it seems far from us, it seems hard and so on. And it's really just, and almost an encouragement. And when I think about people that we coach, it's the encouragement not to let down, keep doing it, because these things will bring a result. You're going to if you keep going, you will be motivated and then you will lead to consistency. And then suddenly the thing that seemed so hard or so far from you becomes the thing that you realize. You kind of thought, oh my goodness, no, no more visualization. It's happened.
Because on that equation that we've now created, I think the discipline the discipline that you eventually bring in, and the reason I talk about emotionless discipline is because when you put too much emotion on results, it can become quite overwhelming, which is another episode we have done, and you stop doing it. Whereas if you take the emotion away and it becomes a change that you're just doing, and you start seeing the impact you're having by the discipline you're having through the consistency and stuff like that, it helps with the motivation. And I'm actually visualizing a little diagram now. Like a little circle.
It's happening. It's happening.
Like the circle. It's like a circle or a triangle. Like you knock one, the two can't exist, right? And that's what I kind of sometimes. I think it would be a triangle.
I think a triangle.
We'll talk a triangle. We'll talk about this.
We'll talk about it next time. Yeah, but there is this whole. There is something in my mindset has changed dramatically about living well.
Yeah,
and not putting too much pressure on myself. So when I said to Jenni that it's just a thing that I have to do. It's not here or there. It's just a thing I have to do. I get up, I go, I do it, I come home, and it's just part of my life.
Yeah.
And when I removed myself from the emotion side of, oh my God, I'm so tired, I'm so this, I'm so that, it's made it much easier for me.
Yeah.
It just has. And I think that's the advice. I know we're going to move into tips in a second, but I think that's one of the key advices I would give to folks that I struggle with the negative connotation of discipline is, what are you trying to achieve?
Yeah.
And what's going to happen? Take the emotion away and just stick to the facts of what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
I definitely think there's something as well around the two words, discipline and freedom, and how they don't feel like they go together, which is making me think of our friend Brene and vulnerability and courage, and how you think they don't go together, but they do. And I think we don't like discipline because sometimes we don't want to be too fixed. Our brains like novelty. Some of us like routine, some of us don't. But it's a bit like if I'm disciplined, I'm sort of, in this box and it's quite rigid. But by doing that, you enable so much more freedom.
Yes.
Even if I think about some of the discipline and the structure I have in my work, and when, people are surprised that I don't really work Fridays and I don't start work till 10 and I try and finish about 4 o'clock. It's, like, how are you getting so much done? But it's discipline to create freedom.
So during the week, you're very focused. But there's a real key with goals there, isn't there?
Yeah, and it is a discipline to create freedom. I would never be able to just wake up one morning and decide to take a day off because that's not planned spontaneity. But if I had to, do you know what I mean? If something happened and it was like, God, I can't be at work today, I need to go, that's different. But because I've got freedom every week in my life, because I'm disciplined about what I do, I don't need to do that because it's built into the way of life that I want to lead. And a bit different to you. You talked about setting up Comms Rebel to because you wanted to have more time and more freedom. When I set up Redefining Communications, I set that up out of fear more than anything.
Yeah.
And we talked about it as a team the other day, and I was saying, this is a lifestyle business. Like it's, if we make millions as we go, then that's great. But it's designed to be more purposeful than that. And it's designed to make sure that the people in my team have balance and have a life that is the right life and balance for them.
Yeah, but it takes discipline to
It does take discipline to do that.
Because you can't, it doesn't just happen.
No.
I mean, we talk a lot about goal setting and 90-day plans and so on. But then I think it's also thinking of things like this as to what else can get us to achieving the things that we say we want to achieve. Which brings us really nicely onto tips. And it could be tips, ideas, even an example of what you do that's really good in terms of discipline. So who wants to start?
I mean, I'm going to carry on the 90-day planning thing.
Yeah.
That's a discipline for me. And it's okay to say, I do a 90-day plan, but I do a 90-day plan. And I am disciplined in making sure I do it every quarter. Now, I've spoken about it in previous podcast episodes. I do it through seasons.
Okay.
Because I'm very different in different seasons. I know some people don't agree with that, but it works for me. So coming up now is spring. So I will be very disciplined to take half a day on a Sunday and write down my plans for the next 90 days in terms of what I want to achieve by the end of those 90 days. And I will be disciplined in doing that.
Yeah.
And that is something that I pride myself on because I know it'll motivate me to be consistent. See, I'm going with this now.
I know.
If you asked me 55 minutes ago, an hour ago, we're like, I'm not really used to the word discipline, but now I'm like,
now we've got a model and everything.
Motivate me to be consistent. And I think planning, which I feel is a theme of season 7, is a key part of success and a key part of freedom.
Yeah.
And we just don't do that enough as people. So that's my tip, is that for me, planning, being disciplined and sticking to that and having accountability to yourself is equally important.
Brilliant. Love that.
I love that. I think mine, if I'm reflecting on probably the last year, 2 years, I know myself quite well. So I know what I need to be disciplined, and I know what I need to make sure that I can sort of keep going. And a lot of that is having a good support network around me with people that will help me achieve the goals that I have set. So that does require, a financial investment on my part to do that. But if I have got certain goals that I want to hit, I know that I need to invest in support for that. So I invested in an online sort of more nutrition coach in the last sort of few years, because food was something that I was really struggling with, because I travel so much. I don't have control over that. I'm not disciplined with my food really at all, because I'm out all the time. So I needed to get some discipline around that to help me live a freer life, I suppose. I'm now putting it into the context of this episode. And I've been doing that now for nearly a year, and that habit and that change has been really helpful. It's been hard at times and frustrating and irritating and annoying, and I've been all of the emotions about it. But I knew that I needed it to help me create the life that I wanted to lead.
Yeah.
It's the same with the gym that I go to. Isn't a gym. It's an independent, almost like a CrossFit, but better. You go there and you book a class, and there's coaches there that help you, in each class, and you can't cancel an hour before. Like all those things I need. If I go to a gym, I'm just going to get off the treadmill and walk away.
Yeah.
So I've had to, put things in place, knowing myself well enough to know what the disciplines are that I need to create the freedom. So I suppose my tip links to some of our other episodes this season. So I'd encourage people to listen to some of those around motivation and feeling overwhelmed. And I think some of our episodes in previous seasons around growth mindsets and things like that. But it's about knowing yourself well enough to know what are the things you need to put in place. And my weekends of planned nothingness are a dream. My husband would like all of them to be like that. So
nice.
But it's doing things that are going to help you have that. And I think one of the things I'm taking away from this conversation is not to shy away from planning. I know I'm a big planner, and sometimes I can get a little bit of Mickey taking out of how much I plan in comparison to maybe other people in my life and family. But it is now, I feel like discipline is freedom.
It's good. Yeah, you can
I'm just going to
put that back at them.
Throw that back at them because, I feel quite empowered. So thank you, Trudy.
You're welcome. And I guess from me, just there's something about fluidity and understanding that just because we were taught that discipline was very rigid, we don't have to express it that way. And I think, and it comes back to something that Jenni was saying just now, right? About, figuring out how you do it. But it is about finding that fluidness about discipline that you can embrace, because at the end of the day, nobody has to see how you've got there. Do you know what I mean? Nobody has to see all the little things that you put in place to make sure that you get from A to B. They'll see the outcome and they'll be like, wow, imagine you've done this, or look how slim you look. Amazing. They'll see all of that as an outcome of some of the hard work that you've put in behind the scenes. But how you cut that up, for your own personal life is your own thing. And so I really encourage people and myself, to think about it in a fluid way, to not be caught up on the negativism of the phrase, the name, from where it was connected to in your past, but to really embrace it, because at the end of the day, we need to succeed.
And discipline is freedom.
Discipline is freedom.
I think it's such
my new mantra.
I like it.
I love it.
I mean, what an episode. We've written half a book.
I know.
Got a model.
We got a model.
Oh, I love it. We'll have to get Nikki, who helps us to do a little transcript of this.
Oh my goodness,
so we
we
can make the model.
Yeah.
That's coming your way, Nikki.
Thank you for listening. If you want to find out more or subscribe to our newsletter, visit edgedrebs.com. We'd love to continue the conversation, so please connect, ask questions, and share your thinking with us. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn under Edged Rebs. If you enjoyed this episode, remember to rate and review us.